I am Joseph Jughashvili, but history remembers me by another name, Stalin, Man of Steel. Perhaps you don't know much about me, but starting today, I will tell you my story and the tumultuous era in which I lived. In 1878, I was born in Gori, Georgia, part of the Russian Empire, into a cobbler's family. This was the beginning of my story, and also the eve of an empire's collapse and a new world's birth. My mother, Keke, was an Orthodox Christian, and my father was a cobbler. Our family was once prosperous, employing 10 workers, but that didn't last long. My 2 brothers died in their childhood, and this pain transformed my father into an alcoholic scoundrel. By the time I was born, our family had become destitute. Whenever my father got drunk, he would beat my mother and me. I would hide under the bed while he shouted and searched for me. The sound of his footsteps was my nightmare. My mother was my only support. When my father beat me, she would step in to stop him, even though it meant she would get hurt too. Once he almost strangled her to death. I had to call the police to stop this scoundrel. In such an environment, to survive and to protect my mother, I learned about violence from an early age. When I was 6 years old, my father abandoned our family, leaving my mother and me to fend for ourselves. Those days were extremely difficult. We worried about survival daily. When my mother cried, I could only hug her and comfort her, saying, "Mother, don't cry. Everything will get better." Despite our poverty, my mother still tried her best to educate me. When I was 10 years old, I entered the church school in Gori. You might find it hard to imagine, but I was a devout Orthodox Christian then, wearing white robes and earnestly saying every prayer. I loved poetry and recitation, and was the best student in the choir. If things had continued this way, I would probably have become a priest and spent the rest of my life in faith to God. But fate is always unpredictable. One winter when I was 14, my classmates and I witnessed a hanging in the square. The criminals were described as irredeemably evil, but I knew they were just farmers who couldn't bear the exploitation of landlords and had escaped. After escaping, they would steal to help other farmers. Everyone sympathized with them. They were true heroes, and I admired them. Thus, my faith began to waver. I started to wonder if God existed. Why would he allow such things to happen? Why did hypocritical priests stand beside the gallows? I began to hate this society and despise the church that stood with the Tsar. At 16, I graduated from the church school and entered the theological seminary in the capital, Tbilisi. It was 1894, the eve of a new era. Various ideas collided there: socialism, capitalism, nationalism. I was drawn to these new currents of thought, Under their influence, I transformed my reflections into poetry and published them in newspapers under the pen name Soselo. These poems became unexpectedly popular and are now considered classic Georgian poetry. If you ever come across poems signed by Soselo, know that they were written by me during that formative period. In my poem, To the Moon, I wrote, though some are oppressed and destroyed, they harbor a fierce hope within, rivaling the heights of Minda. You illuminate the darkened sky, emanating a gentle radiance, tender and graceful as always, reflecting upon the mountains and waters of my homeland. I open my heart to you. I raise my arms toward you. I see the moon's pure brightness, and once more, my thoughts surge like waves. This is my story as a youth before entering the Tbilisi Theological Seminary. Next time, I will tell you how I transformed from a would-be priest and poet into a revolutionary. Until we meet again.